I've got on the channel today a couple of watches. They harken back to the vintage skin diver watches of the 60s. There's two different types of styles. The watches are generally the same, but they're different types of dials. This particular one is called the SpaceBoy, and it's got a very Oris, Omega, and Longines sort of a vibe coming off that dial. And the other one is called the Pallettoni. Pretty much a vintage style skin diver. Rolex, Blancpain, different types of vibes. Pretty decent, affordable watches, and they're running decent hardware with a Miyota movement. Let's check these things out. So welcome back, guys. As you can see here, we've got a couple of new watches on the channel. They're called the HTD Aquatic. We've basically got a SpaceBoy and a Pallettoni. They're from the same company, different dials, same cases. This particular one here, I've actually placed it on a Milanese style strap, just something different. They both come on their bracelet, as is featured on this one, but I just decided to swap this out. I think it looks a little bit nicer, something different to wear throughout the week. But before we start, you saw the pop-up. These watches have been sent out. I only have to send one back. However, HTD Aquatic has zero input into the content of this review. And the watches are quite nice. In fact, they're the same size. They come in at 39mm. They're the same size, but they look different on the wrist. This particular one, the SpaceBoy, quite nice. It's got a lot of Oris, Omega, Longines sort of vibes coming off that dial. And if you notice back in the 60s when they had skin divers, this sort of styling was quite prevalent in a lot of watches. They're a nice looking piece. You can see it says over there horological tools department with a serial number, so pretty cool. I think they've done it nice. They've actually kept these very vintage, even with offering an aluminium bezel without a lume pip. Now I measure the case diameter of both watches at 39.1mm exactly. The case height comes in at 11.8mm. I have a lug to lug of 46.9 and a lug width of 20. Now the crown on both watches is 5.7mm, it's signed, it's screw down, and it offers 200 meters of water resistance, and the total weight on the bracelet, sized to my 18cm wrist, comes to 133 grams. And you can see on the bracelet the comfort is exactly the same as on the Milanese. Very nice, good footprint, beautiful 39mm, great height coming in at 11.8. The bracelet itself tapers from 20mm all the way down to 15.9mm. A nice clasp, in fact a vintage clasp, and I like what these guys are standing for. They're giving you, for me it's been on the wrist, it's been like a vintage watch, but new. It's like new old stock, which is pretty cool, Now taking a closer look at that bracelet, as you can see it features solid end links. They're female, as you can see it drops straight down. You've got screw pins, you've got a milled swivel that's signed, as well as a friction fit press clasp, and it offers 7 micro adjustments. It's been super easy to find the right comfort factor on this clasp, and that's been great. And I think the fact that the hardware is the way it is, it's also a lightweight experience. Coming in at 133 grams on the bracelet, that's been really enjoyable throughout the week. Now both watches come with a Miyota 9039 automatic movement. We can unscrew that crown. As you can see, it pops out. A single click will hack the movement, and then we can adjust the time. We push it back in and it starts. The winding experience, as you'd expect from a Miyota, and the latch down experience, it's first time, it latches on, actually very nice and smooth. There's your 200 meters of water resistance. The only thing I find, the crown is a little bit small, coming in at 5.7mm. It could have been a little bit bigger, but I suppose sticking to the vintage vibe and the vintage style, they've stayed true to form. Now if we look at the bezels of both watches, they are 120 click unidirectional. They go in one direction. They have an aluminium count up bezel, and it has a lume pip, but it's not lumed, so it's just a circle. So it's very vintage inspired, very vintage looking, which is pretty cool, and I think they've stuck to a theme. Now the action, the best way to describe the action on this is delicate. So you can hear it, it's soft, it's subtle, there is back play, but it's giving you that vintage feel, and it lines up perfectly. Both bezels are exactly the same. Now this is where the watches get interesting, because if we look at the lume of the watches, the lume is fantastic. Both watches feature Swiss Superluminova BGW9. It's crisp, it's bright, it's evenly applied, very, very impressive. I've actually enjoyed both of the watches in subdued light. They've both been just a pleasure at night, they really have been. Now getting back to those movements, I decided to put the watches on a time grapher, and as you can see the results, very pleasing. They seem to be yielding a healthy accuracy, and that's with both watches. So well done in that department. Lastly, if I turn the watch over and have a look at its case back, as you can see, they've both got stickers on the case. I don't know if that's going to change, but the particular ones that they've sent me, they're basically, look, I used to see a lot of skin divers that had this sort of stuff in the back, just a red sticker or a yellow sticker, a green, Rolex for argument's sake used to put a green sticker on their watches for years. So maybe they're going to stick with that, I'm not sure, but I like it. It's quite cool. I think it fits in to the vintage appeal of the watches. Now both the watches come in at about €750 each. They both come in on bracelets. The packaging, if you have a look, you've got a box within a box. Very smart, very, very well packaged. You can see the inner box is a beautiful finish. We open it up. Underneath the watch you can see there's room enough to place the booklet, the guarantee, the spare links, the bracelet, what have you. So a nice feeling receiving a watch like this in a box like this. Now with all watches there are positives and negatives, and look, to be honest, for me, one of the first things that I noticed being a vintage watch, I would have loved to see drilled lugs. You've got a polished flank here, you've got brushed on the side, polished sides as well, so it's nicely done. But I really think that these things needed drilled lugs just for that vintage aesthetic, because as a tool that's what they used to do in the day quite a bit. These don't have them. They do have solid end links. They haven't been difficult to remove, but yeah, it just would have been a nicer addition and a nicer look in my opinion. The box sapphire crystal on both watches could have had 1 or 2 more layers of AR. It doesn't fully wash out, you can still see the hands because of the black contrast of that dial. It would have benefited possibly with an extra layer or so. And another potential negative for people is the fact that the bezels have backplay, and it's the exact same amount all the way through, but it is a vintage feel. It actually does harken back to the vintage era. I don't mind it, you know, I really don't. It's one of those things that you just sort of, it's nostalgic, so it's pretty cool. And that crown coming in at 5.7mm, I would have preferred to see maybe a 6.2mm, just bigger, but I won't mark it as a negative because it is in line with the styling of the watch and what I think they're trying to achieve. Now as far as positives are concerned, they look cool, they really do. They're 39, very nice and slim at 11.8. Without the box sapphire they're about 10mm or just under, so they fit really well on the wrist. Both Miyota movements seem to be regulated nicely. The finishing is good. The hands, the loom is exceptional. The loom is really well done, nice and crisp, really bright. So I think in that department they've done well as well. And overall, as a complete package with the boxing and packaging, it's just a nice unit. Potentially the price could be a little bit expensive for some, coming in at €750. I'll leave that up to you guys, but let me know your thoughts, guys. These are the HTD Aquatic SpaceBoy and Pallettoni. HTT, like I said, stands for Horological Tools Department. I will leave the links in the description so you can check them out for yourselves. They've both had a completely different experience on the wrist. I've enjoyed them in different ways. As far as a time reading experience, I think that's a little bit cleaner and easier to read, but that's a bit more funky and fun. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Leave me your comments and we'll see you all in the next video.